Welcome to the Petersen's Bowhunting Podcast. All bow hunting, all the time. Now, here's your host, editor Christian Berg.
All right, welcome back to the Bowhunting Podcast. We are all bow hunting all the time, and today I'm excited to have an old friend back on the show for the first time in a while. That's Mr. John Dudley from Nock On Archery. John, how the heck have you been?
I've been good, man. It doesn't stop here. Keep going.
That's it. You can't stop, you know. Once you lose, it's I talk about that. It's a good life lesson. It's one of the laws of physics, you know. An object at rest tends to stay at rest, and an object in motion tends to stay in motion. And do you know the scientific term for the force that's required to take an object at rest and put it in motion?
Well, I think it's inertia. What are you saying? Which gets it going or keeps it going? Momentum keeps it going.
Yeah, what gets it going?
Well, what's funny is my post for today is actually is a kettlebell post, and it's motivation gets you going, commitment keeps you going.
You're
That's
on
my
the
formula today.
You're on the right track, because if you remember this from 11th or 12th grade physics, there's a dirty 4-letter word for the force required to take an object at rest and put it in motion, and it's called work. So I always tell people, once you have momentum, it's a lot easier to maintain it than it is to stop and start again, because that requires work or more work. You know what I mean?
It's so true. It's so true.
Oh,
and it's funny. It's funny how that all ties in to when you watch someone draw a certain type of cam for the first time, even if they're all 70 pounds. It's funny. You wouldn't think it by seeing some people and how much work they would prefer to put in early or how much work they prefer to put in late. It's a direct reflection of that exact thing.
Yeah. So that's a good lead in to where I want to start today, because we've got a bunch of stuff that I know that we're going to talk about, but I kind of want to start with your new Nock On bow that you guys have put together for this year with PSE. Obviously, that's a continuation of a successful series that you guys have had for several years now. But before we do that, I need to remind everybody that the Bowhunting Podcast is brought to you by Lancaster Archery Supply for all your bowhunting needs. Visit LancasterArchery.com. We've got the gear. We've got the knowledge. We've got the passion. So,
dang, how many times are you going to throw that in?
That's it.
And you pronounce Lancaster correctly. I'm here to say Lancaster for all the non-PA people out there.
If you don't live in Pennsylvania, you can go to LancasterArchery.com. If you live here, you go to LancasterArchery.com. And actually, if you go to LancasterArchery.com, there's a special Pennsylvania only section of the site, some select curated collections that aren't available to people in Iowa, John. So yeah, you want to go to the in-state site. No, that's the one gratuitous mention. It's exciting. It's been great to have them come on board this year, and that's their gratuitous mention for today's episode. And I want to hear more.
I love those guys.
They're great. They're great. The whole team does a good job. And but I want to talk about the Nock On Unite, because you guys launched that at ATA this year, and from what I hear, it's doing pretty darn well for you guys. And this is how many years?
I mean, they just got to get them going. I got one right here, actually.
How many years now, John, for the Nock On series from PSE?
Well, so I went there January 1st, 2020 was my first day. So I think it was 2020. Yeah, because it was just following COVID year. And yeah, even at that time when they had talked to me about doing my own models, if I'm honest, when this goes way back, I was very open, just so everyone knows out there. I do want to make sure everyone knows that I'm not partial to what brand you choose. I had a very awesome opportunity to go to PSE, and one of the things that was different for them, unlike any of the other people that I had talked to. Because I talked to Matthews, obviously, where I started. I talked to them quite often. I talked to I talked to the Hoyt guys quite often. Everybody kind of knew, and to be honest with you, I wanted to be a free agent, but no one wanted. I wanted to do a little bit for everybody, and PSE was coming up on their 50th, and they really wanted to kind of rekindle and rebrand the company and get a fresh start. And they were telling me I could have my own model, but honestly, it didn't sink in at first. It wasn't until, right prior to the ATA show when they're like, no, here's an engineer, do whatever you want, and we're going to bring it out. And then, you can deliver the message about it however you want. So that started with the NTN, which was really just a flagship aluminum riser bow that kind of just ran right there tight with some of the other leading bow companies out there with their high-end aluminum models. And I really went with specs that I knew would just be super forgiving and a really pleasant user experience, if I'm honest. I didn't want to like push the envelopes too much. There was one thing I wish I would have pushed harder was, I had on the original PSE I was going to do was actually, it wasn't going to be called an NTN. It was going to be called a Unite. So the very first drawing I had was a bow that I'd been wanting to do for a long time, which had a universal accessory installment method. And because PSE had history making Picatinny rails for some of their military projects that they had done, I thought this would be the perfect chance to be able to bring out a Picatinny rail like built into a riser for mounting all accessories, so that you could honestly detach them off the bow and be able to take a bow in a duffel bag on like a fly-in trip type thing. And they looked at me like I was freaking crazy. They just said, what are you talking about? Like, there's not going to be any accessory manufacturers are going to make parts like this, which I actually had a few that told me that they would because they were partners of mine. But I did agree with them and think, this is a little bit extreme to do at the end of 2019. So I sidelined the name Unite and brought out a bow for our Nock On Nation, which was short, which was the NTN. And then because that was a flagship aluminum model, the next one I was really passionate about, and I'm always passionate about, is what can bring people into archery. And so the Embark was, a budget bow that had a ton of features that shot really, really well. And I shot it myself even. And then the following year, I was able to I've always wanted to make the highest end bow that you can make if you didn't have to worry about a price tag. And because the Nock On models weren't 100% PSE's flagship models as well, like I could take chances, which was cool, right? And so I really took a chance with the Levitate, and that bow honestly really speaks for itself. In my opinion, it's still the highest end bow made. I love mine. And there's a 2.0 version this year that's updated with some newer stuff. But the Unite came back into play because with the rotation, obviously now it's important to come back to a high-end aluminum model. Carbon isn't in everyone's budget. That's just how it's just how it works. There's things that I look at that aren't in my budget. So this really gives you the ability to have a super high-end aluminum model that can fit a couple more budgets, and honestly has a lot of the shootability and the bells and whistles of carbon, minus a few things, mainly the weight, is the main thing, and how it feels when you pick it up. But the Unite is it's a really awesome bow because we did utilize the universal mounting systems now. A lot of people prefer just the straight slide dovetail on the back of the riser, which this one does have. I'm not using it personally. And then there's a Picatinny mount that goes to the front of this bow. The brace height is still really forgivable, 6.5-inch brace height. And this bow shoots unbelievably well. This one that I'm holding up, which I guess for the audio people that are listening, you're not going to be able to see it, but it's more or less, I did a bow build. It's on our YouTube channel. I did like a full bow build if you wanted to see it go together. But this was kind of, I refer to it as my hybrid bow, which is a crossover between some target stuff, and I could hunt with it if I wanted to. And a lot of my arrow are very similar to being able to hunt with it as well. And I just can't believe how freaking good these bows shoot. I mean, that's what it all boils down to for me, is just how well these things shoot. And I think any lifelong PSE person out there, 53 years or whatever the company's been around, I think there's a lot of people out there that have just been waiting for PSE to like become the marketing monster of some of the other companies, I think. And for those who use it, they recognize they are extremely underrated bows, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, to your point, they just kind of continue to be right, making high quality product for over 50 years now, but maybe they aren't as much about tooting their horn as some of the other people. And I see what you're saying, but at the same time, like, you're going into year 4 with John Dudley now, so Nock On has a great following. So yeah, I mean, it's been an opportunity for a lot of people, who had shot other brands. Obviously, you came over from Hoyt, but I'm sure you have a lot of, people who are tuned into what you're doing that shoot, everything. And so there were probably a lot of folks, whether they shot a Hoyt or they shot something else, who just hadn't really looked at PSE, or maybe hadn't looked at PSE in a long time, and took, a second look at the company and realized, some of the things that they're doing and how innovative they are. And I found what you just said fascinating, going back to the very beginning of your answer with that Unite, because here you were ahead of your time, man. You were going to be the trendsetter, because I actually wrote, it's funny, I have it laying right here in front of me. This is our gear guide for our 2023, our equipment issue. And I wrote my editorial for that about, the big trend that I see is this whole integration, which really started with QAD and coming out with that integrate rest. But, look at it, lots of different rest manufacturers are utilizing that now. And of course, you see those Picatinny rails on different bows. And it was like, for a long time, everybody was in their own bubble, right? The bow makers made the bows, the accessory makers made the accessories. But now it seems like there's a lot more collaboration. And the idea is, let's develop products from top to bottom that really complement one another. And so that when you put them together, you end up with a whole that really is greater than the sum of its parts. It's not just a bunch of, pieces and stuff out of the various boxes, but it's really designed to make a seamless unit, and it shoots, so well when you put it all together.
Yeah. Now, like, I don't know if you can see this. Like, this is like one of my first sketches. I always draw on my chalkboard. So like these are from 2019. And what's funny is, like, as I was like trying to show this system, my idea was always,
that's why you scared the engineers. They got on a conference call and you started showing them those drawings, and they're like, oh man, what have we gotten ourselves into? This guy's got like kindergarten drawings and he wants us to engineer this stuff.
They are too. Yeah, they are. I mean, they're like, so there's chalkboards in every single building that I own. Every single one, there's chalkboards, and there's always chalk right there. And oftentimes my pants have melted chalk in my pockets because, yeah, just if I have an idea, I've got to write it down really quick. And normally, like, I can't use notes because I kind of got to draw it, So, but yeah, that's actually where the name came from. And, if you look, you'll see the name has been trademarked for a long, long time. And truthfully, like, I had built a Unite for Rogan over like a year and a half ago. And I told him he couldn't shoot it anywhere because I've actually shot one or had one to shoot for a very long time. Behind me over there is some of the first generations, but it's really nice because I'm not on a timeline with PSE. It really, they asked me if I want to bring something out, and and honestly, they let me put the testing behind stuff that I really want to. I had two people shooting this Unite. One was Joe because his draw length's short, and then another one was actually Lucas from Grizzly Forge Knives. Just because Grizzly or Lucas has like a 32 plus draw. He actually has like a 30, just short of 33. So the very first one I made went to that long draw length. So I had two people shooting it on the extreme ends of the cam, and then I shot it in the middle and kind of, went with that feedback to dial it in.
So you talk about the Unite as you mentioned something a couple minutes ago, a hybrid bow, which you're talking about, I guess, something that you can use, obviously for bow hunting, but maybe shooting some targets as well. So what exactly in your mind, makes it that good, crossover candidate? Is it, you mentioned the brace height. Is it is it a little bit longer bow? Is it just some other things about the design that make it really stable and shootable?
Well, so what I refer to as a crossover, and I think this is, I'll spend a lot of time this year really focusing on this, especially in my education. So when I started archery, one of the hard things for me was I always shot target archery because I was a bow hunter and I wanted to be the best bow hunter I could be. But I also, truthfully, it took me a long time before I really had a bow that was like, that I set up that was super specific for target, to where honestly everything about it felt different. It'd be like driving, your everyday car versus driving a freaking Formula One vehicle, right? So and it was hard because a lot of like quote unquote target specific bows normally have a cam that's a little bit higher performance. They normally have way less let off. They're normally longer to axle. You have a high powered scope in there. You gotta, you normally have back weights, you got front weights. And it's just a very, you're normally shooting like, a lens in your peep. They're very specific to target. Now, what I like and what I think is critical for people, it all boils down to numbers and repetitions. And when people want to get good at archery, you can't change variables constantly, or you're just never going to master the feel of archery, because it's just like what I just talked about with cams. You could give someone a 70-pound max bow, but let's face it, if you did a Hoyt, honestly, if you did either of the two PSE cams, a Matthews and a Hoyt, and an Elite and an Expedition, those all pull, and a Bowtech, they're all way different. Like when you pull them, even though they peak at the same weight, there's a difference in how they feel. So when I'm talking hybrid bow, I'm trying to get people to take a bow that they can utilize in a hunting situation, but modify it slightly to where they can improve their accuracy a little bit more over a true hunting setup, at events like Total Archery Challenge, for example, or even if you go to Vegas and you shoot in the bow hunting class, which, my bow right now would probably qualify for the bow hunting class in Vegas. And so a few of the small things that I do is I'll change a little bit on the ballistics. So instead of having, an arrow that has, 175 grains in the front or 150 total in the front, I'll have like 100 or 125 in the front, and I'll go down to a 2-inch vein instead of a 3-inch vein, which is just at those longer shots ballistically. If you're not steering a broadhead, it's going to be superior. You're going to have more accuracy, less wind drift, less cast on the arrow. So like ballistically, I'll make a few small changes like that, even though I stay in the 5 or 6 millimeter arrow diameter range. I just slightly change the ballistics so that I can get more yardage out of my quote unquote hybrid bow. The other thing I do is I'll lower the poundage of the bow. So instead of me going and trying to get, 10,000 reps through the year at 70 plus pounds, this hybrid bow I've got a set of 60, pound limbs on there. And right now it's maxing out at about 63 pounds. So it just lets me shoot longer and it lets me enjoy it longer, which, the point of target archery and summertime training is the repetition to build in, those motor skills. The other thing I'll do, that's minimal, is I'll go to a slightly smaller peep size because, I'm not in a hunting blind at last light type thing. So having that slightly smaller peep definitely tightens up those groups. So those minimal changes like that allow me to practice at longer distances for longer periods of time. The longer distances is just a magnifying lens. It magnifies what I'm doing wrong. If when you really get good at shooting long distance, you've learned what slight mistakes impact, and they magnify. They open up and they get bigger and bigger and bigger the further you shoot. So if all of a sudden you realize, well, why am I always shooting low at these longer shots? 3 out of 4 times I'm low. Well, you start to recognize front sight, rear sight alignment. A lot of times once that sight comes down, it's easier to kind of fall out of your peep to where the front sight, rear sight alignment starts to fade at the longer you're holding, for example. Or if your follow through is not correct, you all of a sudden start having these arrows to the left. Or, if you're starting to kind of put a lot of heel into the bow and, put too much front hand pressure on the riser, all of a sudden you start kicking some arrows out to the right. So it helps me be able to be more accurate at the longer distances, but still have the same type of sight picture and the same type of feel is what I'm going to have on my hunting bow. It's just a little bit less weight so I can get more reps.
Yeah, that's interesting. And even as you were talking, I was thinking the new accessory mounting options allow people who want to. You could easily take that even a little bit further, because you could easily, if you really, really wanted to go more towards the target side, you could shoot a different arrow. You could even shoot a different rest sight, and then easily swap a different rest sight back onto the bow for hunting season, but you're still getting most of those advantages, which is, it's literally the same bow, right? So your feel in your hand, the draw cycle, it might change just a little bit if you play with your weight, if you crank it up for hunting season. But I mean, so much of that is still going to be the same. And I liked what you said about the long range shooting. We've said that many different ways over the years, but that's a pretty elegant way to put it. I like that magnifying glass analogy, and those long range shots just being a measuring stick. And as you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, I mean, if you can get to the point where you spend as much time as possible shooting at those ranges that are uncomfortable for you, those ranges where it's really hard for you to shoot as well as you want to, And the reason you do it is because then when you shoot at the ranges you need to in hunting season, it's hard to miss. It gets really hard to, and when I say miss, again, I'm thinking from a bow hunting perspective. I don't know if I can hit a quarter, every time in a bow hunting situation. But if you've done most of your practicing at 80 yards, it's going to be really hard to put an arrow outside the vital zone completely at 30, because those shots start to feel really slam dunky. You know what I mean? When you've been standing out there at long range and then you come in, it's like, oh my goodness, the target looks gigantic.
Yeah, I did a podcast with Jocko last week. He was here with me and we were doing a podcast, and I kind of reflected back. So he's in I think his third season of elk hunting now. Might be four bow hunting seasons. But last year was a year where I actually took the training wheels off a lot of people that I'd been mentoring for the last several years. And I'd just been spending a lot of time going on hunts with guys and making sure they got something first, and kind of, being with them and trying to mentor them and guide them. And last year, several of my friends that I brought into the bow hunting community, I just kind of said, all right, you have all the tools, you can ride on your own, like go on your own adventure and do it. And so Jocko was, he was hunting at the same place I went and hunted the same week as him, but we didn't hunt together. I kind of just said, dude, you're on your own. So he had a guy to call for him, but he got to like do his own things and do his own stalks. And honestly, one of the things that he did awesome was he took every opportunity he could, even if it was a bull, or if it even wasn't a bull, even if it was a cow, he would take little opportunities for like practice to like try to stalk in and just kind of get the checkmate vibe and not make the shot, so that he could just get more practice, which was very smart. And because it was, real world training at that point. And the bull that he shot was at 50 yards. And, the way the whole thing played out, when it like came out and turned broadside, he said he pulled up his rangefinder and it said 50.0. And he, I remember him telling me the story, and he's just like, he just had this look in his face, like he just knew that was done. Like once he saw it was at 50, like it's not like he said, I just sat there and worried about making a good shot. He's like, when I clicked 50, I'm like, you're freaking dead. And listen, dude, I don't know about you, but there was a time where a 50-yard shot in a hunting situation seemed like, honestly, I would probably reduce it if I was telling stories in public, because I think people would have been like, 50 yards, that's kind of a poke. But because everybody's training at double the difficulty now, these shots that honestly, they're not unethical shots. These are shots that people that hunt out west have had to make forever. It seems like if you're a Western hunter, 60 or less is a checkmate moment, out there in that type of country. 60 or less seems like a checkmate moment. So I thought it was really cool that someone that's been hunting 3 years, that makes it a point every year to go to a total archery challenge. He goes to Balboa Park, for 3 months leading up to the hunting season, and he shoots 50, 60, 70, 80, 70, 60, 50. And so he doubles the difficulty, and it honestly, it makes, if you double the difficulty in practice, your game scenario is half as hard. That's just how it works.
Yeah, it's great advice, and it's getting me excited to get out and start shooting, because we're in early March here, and it's getting time for me to soon come out of hibernation. I hate the cold. I'm getting old, John, and when it gets cold in the wintertime, I like to stay inside, but it is getting to be that time. And it's going to be a good year. And you had me thinking about out west. I mean, like, yeah, I was thinking about my last antelope hunt, and I shot that goat at 55, and we decoyed that thing in. It was really neat, but that's close, on an antelope, like 55 yards. It's hard to get closer than that. I mean, that country, there's not a blade of grass higher than your ankle. So I don't know how you're going to move on that thing. You know what I mean?
And when you're in that open of area, when that thing comes in, you're expecting your rangefinder to say like 32, because they look like they're right on top of you. But yeah, when you're like 50, you're like, okay, well, I'm not getting any closer than that. Cause I mean, he looks like, the fact that he's this close is pretty crazy. So yeah, I think the archery industry has done such an awesome job right now about not only making equipment that makes it easier for people to be accurate at longer distances, because the technology is just so much more advanced. There's great products in every single category, but obviously the information that's out there, that's where my passion is 100%. And I see people that I'm coaching for a year, and when I'm like looking at pictures of them, and then I go back and look at pictures of myself 10 years into my career, they already look better. It's like they're already making shots where it's like, man, it took me 2 decades to get to that point. And now people are able to get there in a year, in a tenth of the time. I mean, honestly, a tenth of the time, because there's just such great information on the technique, and there's way more shops that are building bows correctly, and readers that are able to to do some of the fine tuning maintenance stuff themselves at home. And there's just been no better time for the success of our industry. And honestly, when you look at the success of like the quality of animals that get shot by tens of thousands of people, where back when I started and I was, working at Matthews as a teenager, and people would mail in their photos for the catalog, there's, you would sit there and look at some of these pictures and think, wow, this is crazy that 30 people shot, Pope and young deer across the whole US. But then, now with social media, you're almost like 30 people in a state.
Social media is terrible
crazy.
because you're the only one who didn't shoot one if you just look at social media now. But you were talking. I mean, yeah, I was thinking. You ever watch the old like NFL films footage, and and they'll show like Johnny Unitas or Terry Bradshaw and some of these older quarterbacks, and you look at these guys and they look like, honestly, like smaller than you, John. And you're thinking, yeah, there's guys playing Division I football now. It's an analogy, right? Who will not even get a sniff in the draft. And they would have been like the specimen of the league back when those guys were playing. And so it's just a parallel. Everything has progressed so much. The information, the knowledge and the equipment, the training, everything that's available to people now is you can absolutely do it. And I actually wanted to go there next with you because people are always hungry for information and things that can help them to shoot better. And again, not everybody is going to necessarily shoot one of the PSE Nock On bows, although you ought to check them out if you're looking for a bow. But I know you spend a lot of time for, friends, people who, are part of your Nock On community, listening to your podcast, consuming your videos. You do a lot of custom bow setups. And I'm wondering if, you don't get some insights by doing that because you're keeping your hand so tightly, involved in the setup of the bows and then coaching people. What are some of the things that you're really seeing these days that have opened your eyes, because you're always getting better too. What are some things that people ought to really be thinking about and looking at when they're setting up a bow and when they're starting to shoot a new bow to help them, get the most out of it?
Yeah, that's a multifaceted, loaded question too. um, I certainly like this time of year is really when I focus on myself. I come out of hunting season with any type of bad habit. It's not like I have a controlled situation in every shot sequence. So, sometimes I feel a little bit more rushed. I haven't shot near as many arrows throughout the hunting season. So once winter comes, I really like to focus on practicing every day. I focus in a controlled situation. I really, as much as I used to hate indoor archery because I was a 3D guy when I started in a hunting guy. So I felt like you were putting me in a cage when I went to 18 meters. But then when I started shooting competitive target archery, and I had to train for like indoor nationals and stuff, it took me several years to actually like it. I did not like it. I hated it. But what happened was what I hated more was I hated losing more, and I wasn't good at it. So I had to get good at it, and once I got to the point where like I had shot my first 30x 300 round, all of a sudden you start to realize, wait a minute, there's like a new bar at what I'm capable of shooting. And so when you're not shooting like that, you're seeing regression. So I just got to the point where I realized that 18 meters is a polishing stone. It is a polishing stone for your shooting technique, to where that X count is the blade. And, as you just keep working on small details for a week at a time, you're just refining that edge and refining that edge and refining that edge. And I'm very upfront with our followers. And, when I started my indoor shooting back in November, December, I shot like a 296 or 295 or something. I missed a few. I'm getting tired by the last arrows, and 2 out of 3 arrows land. And what I'm trying to show people is I'm not a 300 shooter all the time. I have to, when my edge has dings in it, I've got to start with that coarse stone, and I have to reshape the edge, which for me is normally, going from 80-pound hunting bow down to a bow that's in the 60s, and, being able to draw back a little smoother each and every time, and start to get to where, the cadence of my shot routine starts to come together. My shots are starting to look the same. And then all of a sudden I get a 300, but my X count, might be in the high teens or low 20s. And then you just, every week I'm like, I want to put 1 or 2 rounds forward that are at least a little bit better than last week. And you start to polish that edge. And that's for me, that stuff is critical. But like, in addition to that, having people here that are starting that process from the beginning. So if I have someone come out and do a bow build, it really helps me in what I bring forward to the social media community, because every student has something different that they bring out of me as a coach naturally, whether it's working on, whether it's showing them something small that they never knew about on their equipment, or whether it's showing them something with their form. And it just, by doing that this time of year, it just allows me to come forward with content that is very relevant, which if you're only focusing on your shooting and yourself, that stuff sometimes gets so distant that it becomes not a focal point. So that's why so much of my passion is getting people here, getting them into archery for one, or getting them here and doing like a bow maintenance thing or an overhaul, which for me instantly is a content piece. Like, okay, look at this guy. He's been hitting lower and lower and lower all year. Check out the serving separation that's underneath his knocking points, or underneath his D loops. And then obviously it just gives me another tool for education.
Yeah. So couple things that I wanted to follow up with you there. Do you actually recommend for your students or just anybody who follows you? You talked about kind of like that whetstone or that measuring stick. Do you actually encourage people, hey, even though you may never shoot competitive archery, if you really want to get a barometer of your progress, because I agree with you, right? It's almost impossible to tread water. Everybody in life, no matter what it is, it's archery, magazine editing, writing, running, anything. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. It's very hard to just maintain perfect equilibrium. And the reason for that is as soon as you take your foot off the gas, you start to decelerate. So you're either working to get better,
back to the start of the show.
Or you're getting worse, And so do you actually recommend to people, like, you know what, every week or every month or whatever, go actually shoot around, put a target face up on your block target in the backyard and shoot and actually write down your scores and, make some notes about, if you're not shooting well, where's the arrow going? And then really spend some time thinking about that. What is going on? What am I doing? What's wrong with my equipment, et cetera? And if you're not improving, there's a problem, because you ought to be improving.
Yeah, I definitely, I give homework all the time, all the time. Cause and what I'm really doing is I'm really telling people what my homework is. I'm telling people what my homework is, and I put it out there, and I'm like, okay, here's what you need to do. Like, for example, last week, one of the homework assignments was I went from 4 arrow practice ends. I bumped it up to 6. And one of the things that I showed a video of 6 shots from an end, all starting simultaneously at the same time. And you can see shots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. You can see, honestly, like shots 4 and 6, shot 6 was probably 5 seconds, 6 seconds longer than shot number 2, and when it actually went off. So you can see, as I got tired by adding those 2 reps, my shooting technique broke down. So, you have to, like you said, you've got to build, like, if you want to improve as a runner, you can't just do 3 miles every single day. Like you need to, some days you need to add in 4 or 5, you might need to do a 4 or 5, or maybe one day is a sprint or one day is hills. And so that's what I had to do. That's what I have to do with shooting too, in order to keep my baseline, on a continual upslope right now. And that's what I want. I want a gradual upslope to where by the last total archery challenges, I'm shooting my absolute best of the year by July. And July is my goal date of being the best shooter I can for the whole year, because that then it gives me about 2 or 2.5 weeks in August to convert my quote unquote hybrid bow over to a heavier poundage bow with a little bit heavier arrow and, a longer fletchings, start to sight in with broadheads, have the quiver on your bow. And it allows me to go into hunting season at my peak and at my best. And I think if other people follow that protocol, they're going to end up having the season of their lives.
Yeah. And you talked about, giving homework and various lessons and such. For those who may not be, tuned into it already, somebody might be listening and be like, well, I want this week's homework assignment. Where do people get that? Is that through your podcast, through your videos? Where do people go?
Well, I mean, there's our website is probably the most diverse website in archery. We put a ton into it, and I need to do a better job of telling people the tools there. But our website is not just a web store. When you go in, obviously you're going to see products, but you can scroll down and especially if you go to the little hamburger sandwich menu thing, you'll see the ability to go to the store, or you're going to see the ability to go to, different categories, whether it's Nock Fit or Nock to Fork, or whether it's, School of Nock stuff. And within the School of Nock, there's tons of different categories. So we actually have a WordPress. Half of our website functions completely as a WordPress and vlog. And, we've got videos, we've got written content, we've got all that stuff. Other half of it does function as an e-commerce side. So you can certainly go there and literally dive in all you want. And that gets updated as soon as we make posts. Those same videos will then go to the website. If websites aren't your consumption, then Nock On TV on Instagram, Nock On Archery on YouTube, or Nock On Archery on Facebook are where you could go. And, honestly, I shouldn't say there's no one that can do it, but someone's going to have to be seriously freaking motivated to outwork me in the content space. I mean, someone's going to have to dedicate their life to it. Like this year, I've got 300 videos that'll launch in 2022 or 2023. There'll be 300 content pieces of just videos that you can consume, if you're following our social media or YouTube channel or being on the website. I'm dedicated to it every single day. I
was going to say that's almost a video a day for a whole year, man. 300 videos.
Oh yeah. Yep. Not a problem.
Then the other thing,
I do it 14 hours a day, man.
The other thing that you touched on, and I'm thinking that people are curious, you talked about, some of your events and things that you have where you actually bring people in. Is that something that just anybody? Do I have to be, rich and famous, or can I just come and learn from you right there too? And if I can, how do people find out about that?
Well, there's people that are high-end profile people that I feel like are important to archery. But I think if you follow me, you'll realize that I try to continue to bring new people into the hunting community and archery community. I might work with a high-end person, but I hold their hand for a year or two, and then I let them move on and make their own decisions. So I definitely work with those people because I feel like it's important for archery, and really that's what it boils down to. I think having some higher profile people that are saying, yeah, I hunt. Yeah, I shoot my own meat. I cook my own meat. I think those people are critical. But listen, we Nock On, we spent about 75 or 80 grand last year giving back into the archery community, because when we go to the Total Archery Challenge ranges, there's a lot of staff that has to go there. There's a lot of travel that goes there. We buy the range, and we're paying for our followers to be able to come and interact. And then if I do, I did several bow auctions last year for everyday people. Actually, 3 out of the 4 students that I've had this year are everyday Joes that won a Nock On experience somewhere through an organization that gave all proceeds to a good cause. So yeah, I certainly, for me, my balance is I give people who 100% are our followers and an everyday person, I give them the chance throughout the year at different ways to come here. And then I have these other people where, I feel like it's very, very, very good marketing for the archery industry for this person to be able to, be shooting their bow in Hollywood somewhere, or, be an athlete on the field that's shooting the bow. And because I'm doing it on both sides, I feel like for me, it gives me balance in the middle.
No.
And some years I'm really focused on military.
Yeah. No, and I apologize. I didn't, if that came out the wrong way, because I didn't mean it. Like you're only with those caliber of folks. And I agree with you. Like having a Rogan, taking arrows. No pun intended. That's kind of like a shield for the rest of us, right? Because you have people there who are in positions of influence, and they're again, come back to the analogy of you're either getting better or you're regressing, right? You're either expanding your territory if you're an empire, or you're shrinking, because there's always barbarians at the gates, right? And they wanna take what you've worked to have. And so, yeah, if you can have people who are warriors, in the culture war, if you will, and they are helping to expand our territory, then that's good for all of us. I just wanted to highlight that you do have some of those opportunities where it isn't just those folks who can get with you personally, whether it's something that you're doing at a camp there, in Iowa at your place, or you're out at a total archery challenge, which is probably one of the easiest ways for people who are like, man, I really want to go meet John. I'd love to have an opportunity to maybe fling some arrows with him. Those are great opportunities.
100%. Yeah, 100%. That's honestly, we do like 7 events on the road. It gives people the ability to come to us. It comes down to bandwidth. I offer free content every day. Every day I'm, doing a blog post or a new videos going up, or I'm, doing some type of a feed where I'm literally sharing my coaching experiences constantly. But, there's a few store appearances that I do here and there, especially if it's for a good cause. But it just kind of comes down to bandwidth. A lot of people assume because they say, he doesn't have a job, he just does archery. I mean, I think how busy I am. I actually work for 10 times the amount of people that, people know about. I do a lot behind the scenes in the industry. So I try my best to really document those coaching experiences and the learning experience and the setup experience. And then even like if I'm doing a design, like for example, like with the Unite, I have to like document that process as well, so that once that bow launches, people see how much time and energy actually, went into that. So at the Total Archery Challenge, I shoot every single person that registers on a Nock On course, every person. I shoot with them on a target. Last year I shot with just over 12,000 people. Is how many pictures I have of people, was just over 12,000 that I shot with and gave attention to, and hopefully gave a prize to, or something like that.
That is awesome, man. How many, honestly, like, I don't want to interrupt, but that is so cool. How many, you talked about it earlier, I don't know how many people can outwork you and all that. How many, anybody in our industry, I don't care what you are, what your role is, how many people in the archery industry can say that I personally shot an arrow with 12,000 different archers in a year?
Yeah, I don't know. I just know, I know at a TAC event every morning, they take me up to my range at 6:30, and I come down off the range at 4:00 every day once the last registered shooter group comes through. And there's groups of anywhere from, I mean, 2 is pretty not common, but normally it's 4 people to 7 people. Literally as soon as 4 arrows can be gone, I'll turn around. There's going to be another 4 to 7 there, and it's just constantly coming through. And when you look at like PA and Michigan, if you go there, especially once I get down to the booth area, I want to spend time with people 100%. I spend as much time with people as I can. And, that honestly, that's just who I am. And it's what I'm passionate about. A lot of people that I think don't know me have assumptions, but I'm there for the bow hunter, and I try to help in any possible way I can, because I'm just to the point in this sport where I'm very much at a give back phase. That's what my focus is right now. And as long as I can continue to shoot decent, I'm going to continue to use what energy and I don't know, accuracy I have left to do whatever I can to grow the industry.
Yeah, it's funny. You said earlier, people say you don't have a job, you just shoot archery, but truthfully, it's a very hard thing to reach a point that you've reached. And again, it's not just archery, it could be any walk of life, but there are some people whose job is literally being them. And you're one of those people. You've reached a point where your job kind of is being John Dudley, and it has to do with everything that you've accomplished in competitive archery and in bow hunting. And a lot of people think, hey, I'd like to be there, but it is a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, it opens up a lot of really exciting opportunities for you. It gives you a lot of flexibility. But the other side of that sword is that you can never turn it off, and so you're John Dudley from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed, and you can spend time with 1,000 people. But if that 1,000th and first, just doesn't feel like you had 30 minutes to talk, and then that person is a little bit upset or felt rubbed the wrong way, and all of a sudden, those few bad stories, can circulate way more, and that's just the nature of the world. People love to complain a hell of a lot more than they love to praise.
Yeah, and honestly, like with that, it gets really hard at the TAC events, because there's like two things last year that happened that came to mind. One was I had to, at the end of Colorado, I had to get Sharon to an airport to fly her home, and then me and another one of our guys had to kind of tailgate each other to head towards like Big Sky or Park City or something. But we had to make sure, we were getting Sharon to the airport in time. And we actually had a trailer company deliver a new smaller trailer there. And so I was pulling the big trailer, and we had the Sprinter van, and there was another small trailer that was supposed to get pulled behind the Sprinter van. And there's always chaos breaking down after an event, that, right? And breaking down your vendor village, then breaking down two camps. And we're like kind of on the way out, and we realized that we don't have the right ball hitch for this new trailer that's there. So there's just chaos going on, and we're trying to like buy a used ball hitch off the people that run the ski hill, and like we're trying to figure out who has a monkey wrench to get this thing off, and like all this stuff's going down. And I turn around, and there's a guy there, and he's like, "Hey, John, didn't get to see you this weekend." And he just starts talking, and and I'm like, mentally I hadn't like stopped. And luckily my wife, Sharon, just kind of like comes over within within one or two sentences, because he just kind of said, "Hey, I haven't got to see you. I'm from so-and-so. I'm blah, blah, blah." And so Sharon like kind of just grabbed my arm, and she's like, "He came by the booth several times looking for you, and you weren't there, but this is one of our really good customers from the store." And so all she was doing is like telling me, "This is your 2,000th and first for this event." Like, this last guy, and she knew how much stuff was going on. But for me, I just realized like, okay, freaking, this guy has waited till 4:00 on a Sunday, and he finally saw you by yourself, and, came over and started the conversation. Like, you've got to do it. And the other one that sticks out in my head was coming back from Montana. I was coming back, and after 6 months on the TAC tour, it's hard. You're just worn down, especially when you're driving, you're pulling a camper. You got to be focused. And not to mention, dude, I sit on 100-yard target. I sit on 100-yard target for 3 to 4 days. And at any given time, there's 20 people there watching me shoot. Like
You can't blow a single shot for the whole weekend.
I can't have any stupid brain farts, And so when that last tack's done, I normally as soon as I put my bow in the bow case for 3 consecutive years, I've just given the biggest high five to Sharon. Thank God nothing stupid happened. Whether it's a D-loop break or freaking, knowing me, not moving my sight, not freaking putting an arrow on the D, there's so many things I can have a brain fart about. So I was just so pumped to be able to go home, and I ended up pulling over at a pilot and parking in the middle of nowhere and sleeping for a few hours. And and all of a sudden, as soon as I heard morning traffic, I had to get up, and I came out of the camper in my freaking shorts and whatever I freaking slept in, probably bare feet. And I literally walked outside to let Luna take a dump. And I had a coffee, my hair's all jacked up, and here's people sitting there because they saw the trailer, and they're sitting there and just hey, dude, can we just get a quick pic? We got to go to work. And I'm just yeah, let's do it. So yeah, you definitely have to be on all the time. And honestly, there's certainly times where you're not, and that just happens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you probably do a heck of a lot better job than I would with it, because I'm crabby. And I don't know, man, that's probably why you're doing it and I'm not. But I will say this, I mean, you and I have known each other for a pretty long time now. And, there was a time that you and I used to talk a lot more often. You used to do a lot of writing for us here at the magazine. And this whole Nock On thing just blew up, and you were pulled in other directions, and they're good directions, and
Yeah.
it's great to see everything that you've done. And I'm just saying this, again, to reinforce what you've said. I would say that even though you and I don't have the opportunity to interact as much as we used to, as far as I'm concerned, you're still the same guy, and when we do see each other, I had a chance really briefly. Again, it was a similar thing at ATA this year. We were at the innovations event, and literally you just had person after person after person. I was standing, 30 feet away from you for quite a while. And I could see that there was just groups and groups and groups of people wanting to spend time with you. I finally got, 2 minutes to get in there and just say hi to you and Sharon. And honestly, it was better seeing her than it was you, which
everyone says that.
She's so sweet. I mean, I love her. And but in all seriousness, man, I mean, it was great. And every time, I always feel like every time, we get together, it's like I just saw you yesterday. So I mean, I think that you're doing a great job. It's nice. I appreciate still that, honestly, with everything like you just described, so many people are wanting your time. When I do reach out, and I try not to bug you too often, you always make time, and you just spent over an hour with us right now. So, man, I just say, yeah,
I've got a guy flying in today too. I've got an everyday guy today, and he leaves tomorrow at noon, and at 2:30 I fly to Dallas, for a meeting with a landowner that wants to hold a really awesome archery charity event, and then I've got to fly back and get another person coming. But honestly, Christian, you were in that same mold. I mean, you were kind of fresh with your editorial role at Petersen's. You're a few years in, and luckily, Ulmer recommended me do some writing for you, and you let me write for you for a few years. And then, you became a student of tension activated releases. You had target panic really bad. And we worked through that. And then you ended up coming here on an Iowa tag and executed the freaking ultimate heart shot with the tension activated release and zero target panic. And we got to see that buck freaking pile up. And, you know, that was, and honestly, once you did that, I'm like, okay, I'm taking the training wheels off Christian here. He's freaking good to go.
Well, it's yeah, I mean, that's the whole episode in and of itself. But yeah, what a great, awesome week that was. You know, what an incredible morning. And it's like you talked about it earlier, you know, when you're like Jocko, when you're dialed in, when you're shooting one of those releases and you just know, man, the pin is on the vinyl and the shot's about to break, there is no other possible outcome than this arrow going right there and the animal's going to die. That is like the ultimate confidence, man.
Yeah. This past year, I had just such a freaking ridiculously phenomenal year. And yeah, it just got to the point where when that shot broke and I could see that green pin right where it was sitting when the shot fired, I'm just like, another one bites the dust.
Yeah.
You know, it's awesome to have that confidence.
Yeah, it is. So,
hey, Christian, one thing I'd love to talk about if we have a minute.
Oh yeah, we can go as long as you want, but I don't want to kill your whole day. Go ahead.
No. One of the things I think it'd be cool to talk about is, you know, PSE just got acquired, which is a very good thing. You know, I haven't had the chance, you know, I've kind of made some posts about it, but I haven't really done a podcast specific to it where I'm not limited on 60 seconds. But, you know, one of the moves that Pete Shepley made was honestly when, because I knew that at the end of 19, I was going to be technically a free agent, you know, and like I said, I was open with everybody who had sent me an email and said, hey, you know, if you're ever not happy here or whatever. And I'd kind of just told everyone, listen, at the end of 19, I'd love to talk. My contract's up and, you know, I really wanted to try to go to where I wasn't singular for brand, just for the purpose of, I hope people that follow me or our brand, I hope they realize that I don't care if you shoot a Matthews. I don't care if you shoot a Hoyt. I don't care if you shoot a Bowtech. They're all great brands. And listen, behind this camera, I've got like every new bow and I shoot them all. And I want to know. But you know, Pete was 80 years old and, you know, PSE really was focused on doing a resurgence of the brand and, you know, come have their best year ever at 50th year, which they did. I shouldn't say their best year ever, but certainly in a long time. I think there was a time where they might've did more numbers when they had Novas and crossbows kind of in that model mix. But, you know, they really, part of my job was to help re-expose the brand to where, you know, Pete is in his 80s. Like there comes a point where PSE has to continue on without Pete at the helm. And so there was honestly numerous, as the numbers grew, and especially when they blew up, you know, the first 2 years that I was there, the sales numbers was substantial. And, you know, they had to look at someone that was the right fit. Now, unfortunately, most of the options that were out there were actually remaining silent and talking through it. And PSE was trying to find the best fit for them and their employees and really the vision of their brand. And, you know, someone came forward that was very vocal about the fact that they were going to buy it, you know, and needless to say, Pete has a decision on who does buy it. And so, you know, there was definitely a decision that was made of this is not the right fit for PSE. And I honestly made it pretty clear that, if I'm going to stay around, I want to stay around with the right person too. I don't want to end my career. I want to pick and choose who I work for to end my career. Let's just say that. And the awesome thing was it really came down to several really good options. And the option that it ended up going with, which is the Heritage Group, I'm really excited about, because out of everybody, they were the ones that were communicating with me from the very beginning of, hey, this is an option for us. We want to make sure that you're part of that. And we want to talk with you about the pros, the cons, what we need to do. And so, listen, I worked internally at Matthews for almost a decade. I worked externally, but directly under Mike Looper at Hoyt for a decade or over a decade. And then now, I don't want to work internally at a bow company right now. But I also feel like I understand the processes and I understand the needs of what archery companies need. And this is such an awesome fit. And there's people out there that were a little bit nervous about, a money group that a lot of people don't necessarily know about coming in and buying PSE. But the reality is, for PSE's dealers and for the lifetime consumers, this is the best thing that's happened, because, Pete was individually like trying to run PSE, and that's very, very hard. And the marketing, there wasn't the budget or the structure there for marketing that needs to happen honestly, it needs to happen for any good product. And it's an important brand for our industry. Listen, like these big bow companies and the big arrow companies, they have to be here and they have to be healthy. And if you as a consumer want to know what's new, they have to be able to spend money with Christian to be able to be in the magazine to where you can see that this is the new bow. And I can tell you that, with the cost of manufacturing going up at a very high rate, and the availability of material going down during COVID, marketing was getting tough for people. It really was. And especially when you have someone that's in their 80s, like think of this, you have someone that's in their 80s running a company to where he probably used to buy ads for like $200 or $300, where now the same ad might be 3,000 or 4,000. So, think about these guys coming in.
Just think about somebody in their 80s running the whole country, John. Think about how hard that would be. I mean, oh, sorry.
It's happening, dude. It's happening. So yes. So like, there out of all the options, I can say that they had two very good options in my opinion. But the option now they were very, very upfront and clear to me about how, what hasn't PSE done to help support your initiatives. And so, I was able to tell them, hey, I can't be the only one marketing the new bow. I can't be the only one marketing the new bow. And, I would love to have, more support at the Total Archery Challenges on my target so that I can, so I can interact more with people and just all these different things. And I told them, hey, you can't, like, when you win Vegas again, like have the freaking ad ready to go and be ready to spend some money on some ads. And that was just, not the way that it worked before. But the reality is, like, PSE, I mean, listen, either 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 of the world's biggest indoor events, PSE has won. And, and then a PSE just shot Chris Schaff just shot an 1199 out of a 1200. I mean, that's freaking insane. These are inner tens, like the size of a dime. at US Nationals. So I mean, it's like, this is the most accurate scores in the world being shot right now is with the PSE, and we didn't have the marketing ability to like let people know about it. So now we're going to have that, and we're also going to have, people that, and I can tell you another concern I've seen was, there's a lot of equity groups that are consuming smaller archery companies, and then they literally take their product to a production that's just cheaper to manufacture and the quality goes down. I understand that concern. The reason this was acquired by Heritage was because they were so focused on the US manufacturing that PSE does. I mean, it's the only carbon bow that's totally made in the USA. Like, that process is absolutely critical to the new focus and new direction of the Heritage Group, which when this stuff is brought forward and it's transparent to me, who's literally a guy that's, at his own dojo doing his own thing, but trying to support this brand, that was absolutely critical. And truthfully, if I tell everyone out there, one of the things I was clear about on whether or not I would stay and renew was, I told them that it's really an important thing to me to be able to speak openly about other brands, and that I think me shooting the bow that I think is the most accurate for me speaks for itself. But I also want to be able to, help out people that are using other brands and not feel like, I don't, with some companies, I can just tell you the contract says like, I can't even post someone else using another brand. And that in itself is a big limitation for me. I want to be able to, any grassroots person that comes up to me, if they're shooting a different brand, I want them to know 100%. I look at them right in the eyes, like every freaking archer and bow hunter that I can appreciate, and I don't care. I've shot them all. I'm very, very fortunate to start. My first ever bow I bought was a PSE. Part of that honestly resonated with me of, it would actually be cool to like end my career where I started. Like, that was kind of cool, which I could say the same thing with Matthews. If I went back to Matthews, I'd kind of end where I started internally. So, and even at this point, if I shot a Matthews again, or I shot a Hoyt again, those are all homes for me that, I had never burned the bridge there. And I still really care a lot about the people that are internal in all those companies, but I can tell you that PSE is a whole new ecosystem too. Their employees, just everything they do is so different than Hoyt, so different than Matthews. But I just freaking love how the bows shoot for me. I love that. And the new ownership is just going to allow me to really take the reins of what I'm passionate about and go with it. And they understand that the best interest of the company is still what I'm looking at, but at the same sense, I want to look at what's awesome for the whole industry as well, so that we can keep it going.
Well, I mean, we need a whole lot more of that attitude in the whole world, because there's no doubt, in the archery industry, yes. I mean, I'm pretty tuned into it. I get it. Like, yeah, some of these companies, these brands, they get pretty bent out of shape. Like, if there's even like one little mention of anything that they don't control. And what they don't realize is, if you really want to build credibility, if you really want to build relationship, and you used the word bridge, if you really want to build a bridge over to those customers of your competitor, don't be so bent out of shape about sharing a little bit of light or just admitting what everybody knows. I mean, I immediately started thinking about politics as you were talking. And I was like, this is the problem with the world today, because we've become so, if you're a Republican, you can't say anything good about a Democrat or vice versa. And what we really need is we need people like John in the archery world to stand up and say, you know what? I might not agree with that person on a policy or an idea, but guess what? She's an awesome person because I know her. She loves her kids. She loves her husband. Oh, guess what? So do I. And, my kids go to school with her. And you know what I mean? And if we started to see each other, like you said, we're all chasing the same passion of bow hunting. And it doesn't matter what kind of arrow you shoot or what your favorite broadhead is. And then we start to come together as a community and realize that we do actually have things in common, that probably go beyond our brand preferences, which at the end of the day are honestly kind of petty because as to your point, guess what? There's like 100 good broadheads on the market. You know what I mean? So if we want to sit around all night and drink beer and argue with each other over which one is the best, we can do that if it entertains us. But it doesn't mean that like there's still not 100 good broadheads out there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when I look at, like the FOC debate and like momentum debate, like people come to me and if they see me shoot something and I don't pass through, they're like, oh, geez, you needed a 700 grain arrow or whatever. Listen, I've never hunted. I've hunted 2 animals in my life with an arrow that heavy, and it was mainly because I had to. But like, I kill with what I have, and I believe in what I have. And honestly, I'm not totally sold on whether or not I want an arrow to pass through an animal, if I'm totally honest with people. So, I go with what's working, but I also understand there's another opinion to it. But yeah, we have to not necessarily finger point, because here's the deal. We can't make enough releases for some of our followers. So if there's other companies out there, PSE can't make enough bows for the entire industry. Matthews can't make enough bows for the entire industry. Easton can't make enough arrows. I mean, they honestly want to make sure they're functioning at capacity. And yeah, they're going to want to grab as much as they possibly can. But our industry is vast, and we need a lot of great manufacturers that not only provide good products that don't get people hurt, but we also need products that, we need brands that allow margins so dealers stay open. If your local awesome archery shop can't stay open, well, guess what? Not everyone's going to work on their bow from their home by watching some cool videos. They need that store,
And along those lines, you want to start pointing fingers. Some of these people who are listening need to stop buying knockoff rage broadheads on Amazon from China and then bitching and moaning because the broadhead doesn't work. Like, some of that stuff is literally like junk, counterfeit stuff. It's not just rage. There's a lot of that out there too. If you're paying like $12 for a pack of broadheads that should cost $45, ask yourself some questions, and what are you really saving, and what are you really doing to our industry too?
Yeah, those were rejected for a reason. The hardness wasn't correct, so they break. And then the factory wants to recoup some costs, so they undercut. But yeah, I think there's so many good things happening now. I'm excited to see where PSE lets me go moving forward. And I've got my nose down. I want to put out a lot of great content. I want to hear more stories of people that are doing the best ever. And then in between, I try to bring out, products like the Unite or, this freaking quiver that, I try to bring out things that I'm passionate about that no one's making the way I want them. So
that's sexy. Tell me about that quiver, man.
Oh, have you seen one? Did I send you one?
What is that? I don't get any of your stuff anymore,
I need to send you one. What the heck? Yeah, this, in my opinion, I took everything that I didn't have in certain quivers that were on the market and put it into this one. Super light. One of the things everybody likes is when this detaches off your bow.
What's it called? You got to tell me what it is, what it's called first.
Checkmate.
Okay.
Checkmate quiver. You can get it on the website. But yeah, what's cool about it is, this bracket that mounts on your bow for your little dovetail. I've got a cool little thing right here to where you can have a follow-up shot mounted on your bow all the time. So, you can always put an extra arrow on the side for your little mount. Super lightweight. It's built on a radius. So the overall width of your arrows in the quiver is like 20-something% smaller than a standard quiver. So when you have like side pressure blowing on you, you don't have near the drift, but it's super lightweight. It's got a built-in little hook for, whitetail hunters that are in the stand. The broadhead foam fits every type of broadhead imaginable.
I like that bracket.
It's got front and rear deploys. Yeah,
I like that bracket. I stopped taking my quiver off the bow several years ago, and I just don't mess with it anymore. But for the whitetail guys who do, and there's an awful lot like here in Pennsylvania, I know who do, that's really nice that even when you take the quiver off the bow, you got that hanging in the tree, you have that arrow that stays on the bow because it's on the mounting bracket itself. So you've got, like you said, a backup arrow right there that you don't have to. I mean, how many times have we all done it back in the day? I mean, and that's one of the reasons I stopped taking off is like, you flub a shot and now, you're trying to watch the deer, but you've got to turn around because you're quiver and you're trying to grab an arrow and you're making noise and you're moving all around. I mean, that's great.
Yeah, 100%. Whereas for me, every time I have the quiver on my bow, and especially if I'm hunting at a place that's not mine, there's always those dodgy easy hangers that as soon as you hang too heavy of a bow on it, the whole thing like pivots out of the way and almost drops your bow to the ground. So I've always just gotten the habit of taking mine off. But so many of the things that we make at Nock On Archery are just problem solving things. Honestly, all of them are things where I'm like, why doesn't anyone do this? And then I'm just like, you know what? I can do it. Like, what am I even talking about? I can just do it.
Well, start making some stuff for us lefties. The problem with all the hangers in people's stands is they're on the wrong side everywhere. And I shoot most of my deer. If I'm hunting with outfitters, I shoot most of the deer facing the tree because the stands are set up backwards. But other than that, it's fine. Oh man.
Yeah, I feel you.
I think I got a 2-episoder here, Dudley. This is good work. This is going to be like 90 minutes of Dudley goodness. I think I can just break this into like 2 45-minute shows and get 2 weeks out of it.
Oh, geez. Just do another one.
I don't know. I'll have to wait and see. I'll have to wait and see. Well,
there's
maybe
hardworking people that want to hear this on a Monday. They want
Tuesday. We drop episode every 7 o'clock every Tuesday morning. We drop. And somebody who's driving truck or something, we can get them through 90 minutes of highway with this, or somebody who has a long commute to work, we might get them to and home again in one podcast.
Yeah. Well, I think you should do it, dude.
All right. Well, since John says just drop it all at once, give it all to him. I just don't want people to miss some of our best material was here at the end.
That's very true.
All the new ownership group stuff and some political commentary. So, man, if only
it seems like the common denominator with podcasts is whenever you like write down questions, they come across like that. But then once you get into conversation, then it's like, sitting at a hunting camp where me and you are just shooting the bull. And yeah, that's when it comes off and it's more natural for sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't ever hardly write down questions. That's part of the problem is I'm not always as prepared as I should be, but when I know a guest as well as I know you, I'm not too worried about it. And I figured we'd be fine. And lo and behold, we were. So with that, my friend, I will let you go. I got another, it's 20 of 10, man. I've got my weekly staff call in 20 minutes. I got to let you go.
Sounds good. We'll have fun with that.
Give my best to Sharon. It won't be as fun as this podcast, but gotta keep things moving along over here at Petersen's Bowhunting.
Thanks for doing what you do, man.
Hey, same to you. Everybody appreciates it.
Thanks for downloading the Petersen's Bowhunting Podcast. All bow hunting, all the time. Pick up the latest issue of Petersen's Bowhunting magazine on your local newsstand, or connect with us online at bowhuntingmag.com.